Yolanda van der Vyver will look more specifically at property disputes in South Africa. She holds a PhD in architecture from the University of the Free State, is a founding member of Y&K Architects, and was the 2021 inaugural Emory University Hala Institute Fulbright South Africa Distinguished Chair at the Center for Study of Law and Religion. Her interests include interdisciplinary study and the convergence of law, religion, and architecture. Yolanda?
Thank you very much for the introduction. My talk today is a cautionary tale and the cause of schism in church, legal disputes over ownership, and the detrimental effect that this has on the built environment. My presentation compares two legal disputes heard 120 years apart in Pretoria, South Africa. The parties to the dispute are different congregations of the same Dutch Reformed denomination, the Nederduits Hervormde Kerk, or NHK, and the disputes pertain to ownership of immovable property, so houses of worship, as well as open space attached thereto. The first case, determined by the Supreme Court in 1894, was about ownership of the church that was built in the center of Church Square, the heart of Pretoria, from where the town grew. The dispute was the result of schism when certain members of the NHK, which was the state church at the time, expressed their desire to be free from state meddling in church affairs, and also because they refused to sing hymns in church. The two congregations then tried to unify, and a large number of the original members left the church. All three parties claimed ownership of the building and the square, which was public space. The Supreme Court decided that the unification was ultra vires and therefore invalid, and the members of the congregation who did not unify remained the legal owners of the building and the square. But the parties reached an agreement and decided to sell the property to the state, the government, in 1899. After not being used as a church for 5 years, it was demolished in 1904 after the Anglo-Boer War by the British colonial government, who cited instability of the clock tower. 3 new churches were built in the area, one for each of the 3 congregations, or what we call the sister churches. Despite the absence of the church, the name Church Square has persevered for over 120 years, but its sense of place and identity as a religious gathering space was changed forever. The second, more recent case is the subject of a decade-long bitter legal conflict that has had a different outcome. Here, the court decided that houses of worship belong to the congregations and not the NHK, even if the congregations decide to break away. Between 2010 and 2014, 13 congregations broke their ties with the NHK after it changed its stance on apartheid. The break was sparked by the wording of the NHK's apology for apartheid, because it contained a sentence stating that apartheid was damaging to the image of God. The congregations pertained that the image of God is not in man, but only in one man, namely in Jesus, and therefore claimed that the church's decision on its apartheid stance was procedurally incorrect. They relinquished ownership and control of their properties by donating and transferring their houses of worship to third parties, voluntary associations that are not members of the NHK. The NHK claimed that the transactions were not in accordance with the Constitution and church order, that the congregations did not have the necessary authority to dispose of their property, and that the agreement should be set aside. The High Court in Pretoria determined in March 2022 that the congregations may alienate their properties and that the NHK was not party to the donation and therefore has no legal standing to challenge the validity of the agreements. So far, the church buildings alienated by the 13 congregations are being maintained and are fully functioning churches, although it remains to be seen if a similar fate would befall them without the support of the NHK. So to conclude, the reasons for schism may seem frivolous to outsiders, but the rift is real to many members. The secretary of the NHK stated that the matter was more about breaking the religious bonds between the faithful than about the properties. The advocate acting for the congregations called the NHK the most hard-hearted Christians that he ever encountered. And the judge called the dispute an unfortunate rift between members of the Christian faith. And as I said, this is a cautionary tale, very detrimental. It had an adverse effect on the built environment and also the religious environment. Thank you.